Something happened today that changed how your person sees you forever. Wait, pause for a second. Something quiet, something almost invisible has just shifted. And even though everything around your person looks ordinary right now, the inside of them is no longer the same as it was a few hours ago. Today, something happened that they weren't prepared for. A conversation, a moment. A sentence said in passing by someone who didn't realize the weight of what they were doing. Someone, a third person, someone outside the small world of whatever you and them used to share, said something about you in front of them today. And the way your person heard it, the way it landed in a part of them that hadn't been reached in a long time, has rearranged something they can't put back. They're not panicking. They're not crying. They're just sitting in a different version of themselves than the one they walked out the door with this morning. And from this point on, the way they see you is different. Permanently. If this message speaks to your heart, comment, "I receive this love," like the video, and subscribe for more. Let me set the scene because the texture of today matters here. It wasn't a special day. That's the thing about days that change you. They almost never look like the kind of day that should. It started ordinary. They had a normal morning. Whatever it is they do on a typical day, that's what they did. There was no warning. There was no calendar reminder that said, "Today, something is going to crack open. Today, you're going to have to stop pretending. Today, you're going to look at a person you've been telling yourself you've moved past, and realize you haven't moved past them at all." None of that was on the schedule. But the day had its own plans. It happened at one of those everyday gatherings. A meeting, a meal, a casual hangout. Somewhere with other people. Somewhere with enough background noise that no one noticed the moment when your person went still. Because they did go still. For maybe 2 seconds longer than they should have. Long enough that anyone watching closely might have caught it. But no one was watching closely. Everyone was busy with their own conversations, their own thoughts, their own afternoon. And in the middle of all that, someone, a third party, mentioned you. Not on purpose. Not even meaningfully. Just naturally, the way people do when they're piecing together the relationships and stories of the people around them. And what this third person said about you wasn't long. It wasn't a speech. It was a sentence. Maybe 2. But the content of it was the kind of thing that bypasses the usual filters in a person's mind. It was specific. It was warm. It was honest in a way that wasn't trying to make a point. And honesty without an agenda has a particular weight to it. It can't be argued with. It can't be reframed. It just sits there, in the air, telling the truth about you, while everyone in the room continues talking around it. Stay with this. Because there's a deeper emotional layer here that's only just now starting to surface. Your person's first reaction was internal. Their face barely changed. They said something neutral, maybe something polite, maybe nothing at all. They reached for their drink, or for their phone, or for whatever was nearby that could give their hands something to do. Because when something hits you unexpectedly, the first instinct is to find a way to look like you weren't hit. They did that, and they did it well. But inside, the room had narrowed, the voices around them had softened, and your name was sitting in the center of their chest like a small, warm stone. You see, what your person hadn't realized until today is how much they had been managing the version of you they kept in their head. Over the past weeks or months, they had quietly edited the picture of you. They had softened some parts. They had sharpened others. They had been telling themselves a particular story, with particular shading, that allowed them to be okay with however things had ended or paused between you. And it had worked, mostly. They had functioned. They had moved through their days without you taking up too much room. And then this third party walked into the room with a description of you that didn't match the edited version. The third party's version of you was cleaner, truer, closer to who you actually are, and your person felt something strange happen as they listened. They felt their carefully edited version of you start to fall apart in real time. This is where things quietly began to shift, because once that happens, once someone holds up a more honest picture of someone you love than the one you've been carrying, you can't go back to your version. Not really. You can try. You can try for the rest of the night, and you can try for the rest of the week. But every time you reach for your version of them, the more honest one is right there, refusing to disappear. That's what your person is dealing with today. Not a sudden, dramatic revelation, just a quiet replacement. The version of you they had been managing has been quietly replaced by the version of you that's actually true. And the version that's actually true is harder to walk away from. The version that's actually true asks more of them, asks them to look at what they did, what they didn't do, what they understood, and what they missed. Why did hearing her name from someone else hit like that? That was the first real thought they had as the conversation moved on. They didn't say it out loud, of course. They didn't even fully form it in language. But it floated up, the way these thoughts do, and it didn't go away. They tried to push past it. They tried to laugh at the next joke. They tried to be present. But part of them was already somewhere else, and that part wasn't coming back. What happens next isn't loud, but it's where the real shift starts. Later, after the gathering wound down, after the evening turned toward home, your person did something they hadn't done in a while. They got quieter than usual, not pointedly, not in a way anyone could accuse them of. Just a few inches deeper into themselves than where they'd been operating from lately. They drove home, or walked home, or sat in a rideshare looking out the window, and they let their mind do what it needed to do. They didn't fight it this time. They were too tired to fight it. And the moment they stopped fighting, the memories started arriving. The first memory was small, almost embarrassingly small. The way you used to do something specific around them. A phrase you used, a look you gave. The way you handled a moment they had been bracing for, and made it gentler than they expected. They hadn't thought about that moment in months, but tonight, with the stranger's words still resonating, the memory came back so vividly, it felt almost loud. They could almost hear the sound of your voice in it. They could almost feel the temperature of the room you were in when it happened. And then the next memory came, and then another, not all at once, in a soft sequence. Each one connected to the last by some thread they couldn't quite name, except that the thread was you. They saw for the first time in a while the actual shape of who you had been to them. Not the edited version. Not the version they had built to make peace with the distance. The real version. The version this third party had described today without even trying. And as that real version assembled itself in their mind, something inside them started to ache. This is where understanding slowly begins. Not the dramatic kind of understanding. Not the kind that arrives with revelation. The slow kind. The kind that sits down next to you and says you knew this all along. You just didn't want to know it. That's what was happening to your person tonight. They were realizing that the third party hadn't told them anything new. The third party had simply said out loud what your person had known privately. And your person had been hiding from that knowing. They had been keeping it tucked away in a place they didn't visit often. Today, the door to that place got pushed open by a stranger's casual sentence, and now the knowing was out in the room with them. And it wasn't going back in. Maybe I let go too quickly. That was the next sentence in their mind. It came in soft. It came in honest. And they didn't fight it. There was no point in fighting it tonight. The day had stripped the fight out of them. They were tired in the specific way you get tired when you've been carrying a story you can't carry anymore. So they just held the thought. Maybe I let go too quickly. They held it the way you hold something you've been pretending you didn't see. Carefully, not yet ready to do anything with it, but not willing to drop it back into the dark either. Stay with this. Because there's something underneath what's happening that matters even more than the surface story. Because here's what really changed today. Up until this morning, your person had been able to think of you as someone they used to know, Past tense. A chapter. Someone they had cared about, sure, but someone they had successfully placed in the rear-view mirror of their life. And that frame was working for them. It was protecting something. It was letting them keep moving forward without having to look back too often. But after today, after the third party's words, they can't think of you in past tense anymore. The way the third party spoke about you, the present and warmth in their voice, the specificity of the detail, made you a present tense person again. You're not someone they used to know. You're someone who exists right now, somewhere being who you are. And that change in tense is enormous. It's the kind of change that, once it happens, can't be undone. Why does this still feel unfinished? That was the question that arrived next. Quieter than the first. More dangerous, actually. Because that question, once asked, demands an answer. And the answer your person was starting to suspect, the answer they hadn't let themselves voice yet, was that it felt unfinished because it was unfinished. They had walked away thinking they had completed something. Today, they were realizing they hadn't completed it. They had just stopped engaging with it. There's a difference. Completion is when both people have placed the relationship somewhere honest in their hearts. What had happened between you was something else. It was something that had been paused, not closed, and paused things wait, quietly, patiently, until the right moment to ask to be looked at again. If this resonates, let it settle in you. There's no rush. By the time they got home tonight, by the time the front door closed behind them, and the silence of their own space wrapped around them, the day had fully landed. They sat down. Maybe in the kitchen, maybe on the edge of the bed. Wherever it was, they sat, and they let it land. They thought about you in a way they hadn't allowed themselves to think about you in a long time. Not nostalgically, not sentimentally, honestly. They thought about specific things you did, specific ways you showed up, specific moments where you were patient with them when they didn't deserve it, specific moments where they had been short with you and you hadn't held it against them. And as they thought, the picture of you got clearer, not bigger, just clearer, like wiping condensation off a mirror. Something about them still stays with me. That sentence appeared next, and they let it. They let it stand in the air of the room without arguing with it. Because what was the point of arguing? The day had already proved it. If you didn't still stay with them, you wouldn't have hijacked their afternoon the way you had. You wouldn't have replaced their carefully edited version of you with a truer one in the span of a single conversation. People you've actually let go of don't have that kind of access to you. Only people who are still alive in some part of your heart can do that. And tonight, your person had to admit, you were still alive in some part of theirs. This is where the perspective begins to change, because once they admitted that, the rest started rearranging too. They started seeing the situation between you two from a different angle. They started seeing the things they had done, or hadn't done, with cleaner eyes. They saw the moments where they could have shown up and didn't. They saw the moments where they had defended themselves when they should have just been honest. They saw the moments where they had taken your patience for granted, the moments where they had assumed you would always be there, the moments where they had treated something rare like it was ordinary, and they didn't drown in any of it. That's important. This wasn't a spiral. This was something cleaner. This was looking at their own behavior with the kind of clarity that only comes when you're finally willing to be wrong about your own story. There's a verse, just one, that fits the quiet weight of what they're sitting with. The book of Ecclesiastes says that what is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted. Tonight, in their own quiet way, your person felt that. They felt the specific weight of things that can't be undone. And instead of running from that weight, they let themselves carry it, just for a little while, just long enough to learn from it. What happens next is subtle, but it matters. The pull to reach out came in waves tonight, not as a plan, not as an urgency, just as a wanting. They wanted to say something, anything, just to hear back, just to know if you were okay, just to know if any version of what they were feeling tonight was something you were also feeling, somewhere on your own side of the world. They didn't act on it. People rarely act on these waves the first night they come. But the wanting was real. The wanting had a shape, and the shape of the wanting was honest. They didn't want to win you back, exactly. They didn't even want to ask anything from you. They just wanted you to know, somehow, that they had finally seen you the way you deserved to be seen all along. You don't need to force this. Just feel it. Because here's the part that's quietly miraculous about what happened today. The third party didn't know what they were doing. They were just being a person at a gathering, saying a true thing about another person they had observed. They had no idea their sentence would do the kind of internal work in your person that hours of reflection couldn't have done. They had no idea their casual honesty would walk into your person's heart and rearrange the furniture. That's how this kind of timing works. Not loud, not orchestrated, not announced. Just a small, ordinary moment, placed exactly where it needed to be placed, by a hand your person can't see and isn't aware of. And your person, even if they wouldn't use spiritual language to describe it, felt something tonight. They felt the strangeness of it. The way the moment had come from outside their own thinking, the way it had bypassed all their defenses, the way it had gone straight to the part of them they had been protecting. They couldn't explain why a stranger's words about you had hit so much harder than their own thoughts ever had. But they didn't need to explain it. They just needed to receive it. If you've felt this shift too, you already understand what's happening on their side of it. The night is getting late on their end. They're not going to message you tonight. Probably not tomorrow either. But what's changed inside them is real, and it's going to keep working on them quietly, the way water works on stone. They will think of you in moments they don't expect. A song will play. A phrase will be repeated by someone else. A small thing, completely unrelated, will pull them right back into the feeling of today. And each time that happens, the truth that landed in them this afternoon will feel a little more permanent. They are no longer the person who can think of you the way they used to. That version of them ended today, quietly, without ceremony. The new version of them, the one with a clearer picture of you, is just beginning to learn how to live with what it knows. The transformation is small, but it doesn't reverse. That's the part to trust. Not the timing of when they reach out, not the words they might or might not say. Just the fact that something in them has changed in a way that can't be unchanged. Some doors, once they open inside a person, stay open. The third party today opened a door, without ever knowing they were holding the key. And on the other side of that door is a version of you that your person is finally seeing clearly. Maybe for the first time. Maybe for the first time, in a way that lets them feel the full weight of who you are, instead of the lighter weight of who they had decided you were. You don't have to do anything with this. You don't have to wait by your phone. You don't have to read into every silence. The work is happening, and it's happening on its own quiet schedule. Your part is just to keep being who you are, the version of you that someone described accurately today, without any prompting. The version of you that doesn't need to be performed. The version of you that has always been you, even when no one was looking, even when no one was saying it out loud. And what they're beginning to realize now, as the quiet of the night settles around them, is something they can't walk away from anymore. Not this time, because today changed how they see you, permanently. And some things, once they're seen, can never be unseen. The picture has changed, and it isn't going back.